Welcome to the Filmed Live Musicals podcast, a podcast about stage musicals that have been legally filmed and publicly distributed. The Filmed Live Musicals website contains information on nearly 200 musicals that have been captured live. Check it out at filmedlivemusicals.com. And now, on with the show. Welcome to episode 43 of the Filmed Live Musicals podcast. I'm your host, Luisa Lyons, and my guest today is writer, composer, and lyricist, Dr. Gus Gowland. Hailing from York, Gus holds a BA in acting from the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama, a master's in musical theatre from Goldsmiths, and a PhD in musical theatre from the University of Wolverhampton. His work has been performed at the Theatre Royal Stratford East, the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland, and Leeds College of Music. His first full-length musical, Pieces of String, premiered in 2018 and won the UK Theatre Award for Best Musical Theatre Production. Gus was also awarded the Stage Debut Award for Best Composer or Lyricist. Pieces of String was filmed live during its run at Mercury Theatre Colchester and is now available to stream on digital theatre. Welcome, Gus.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Hi, nice to be here.
It's so wonderful to be able to chat with you. To start us off, what made you fall in love with musical theatre?
Oh, wow. Start with a biggie. I don't know really. I've just always loved them since I was a kid. I saw the movie of Grease when I was about 4 or 5 and fell in love with it. And there's just something about telling a story through song that just hits me right in the heart. And a lot of the music that I've always really loved as well, the more sort of commercial pop music, has been the music that has more of a story behind it or more of a character. So I think I'm just really into that mixture of what emotion does with music and what words can do with the sort of brain and thinking and that combination. It's the Yip Harburg thing of like the song makes you feel a thought or something. I'm paraphrasing, but whatever he said was brilliant and is right.
And praise be to Yip Harburg.
Exactly.
So you mentioned watching Grease. Did you watch other movie musicals or specifically filmed live musicals, so stage shows that were filmed?
Well, I watched a lot of movie musicals. I didn't go to the theatre when I was a kid, so it was all from movies, a lot of Disney, obviously. But one of the biggies for me was seeing the Les Mis 10th anniversary concert at the Royal Albert Hall. I remember it very, very well. I think it was like Christmas Eve or something. It was Christmas time, and all my family went out, and I didn't want to go out because I was being like a surly, almost teenager. And I was like, I'm going to stay in. And I just thought it just meant that I could watch telly and watch what I wanted to watch. And I stumbled upon it, and it just completely like blew my mind. I didn't know what it was, and that was like a real light bulb moment for me of like, this is what I want to do.
What an introduction too, with that particular production.
I know.
I love the all the Valjeans at the end singing. Do you hear the people sing in
Yeah,
all the different languages? It's so beautiful and powerful.
it's amazing. I love it.
I love that one too. What led you to, so you fell in love with theater as a, it was kind of by osmosis through movie musicals.
Hmm.
What led you to study musical theater at college?
Well, I trained as an actor and I was working as an actor, and I didn't study in musical theatre acting. I studied like classical acting. But I was like the guy in my year that was the musicals guy, which to be honest suited me. And that if I'd have gone to musical theatre school, I probably would have not been good enough. But in a group of actors, most of whom didn't want to sing, I was like
Mm.
the singer. And so I was doing bits and bobs here and there, performing it. But I'd always written, I was writing when I was at drama school, I wrote some music for a play that we did, and our final musical was based on a poetry anthology called River Anthology, and it was an original musical, and I wrote 2 songs for that. So I was always interested in that, but it didn't seem like a viable option as a career. I don't know why acting seemed more viable somehow. It's just as ridiculous. But while I was acting after leaving drama school, I started writing work to put on, as you do on fringe theatres, just to be creative and make work. And one of the things I did was a one-man musical that I wrote and performed in called Tell Me on a Thursday.
Is that a tip of the hat to Lloyd Webber's Tell Me on a Sunday?
It is, absolutely. Whereas that was about a sort of young British woman trying to find love in the US. Mine was about my terrible escapades on the gay scene in London. But yeah, it sort of gave me the courage to go and study musical theatre writing. It made me go, okay, I've maybe got something here and it's worth exploring. So I went to Goldsmiths to do the MA in writing musical theatre, and that sort of has, yeah, that changed everything really.
So growing up, did you study music or play, like, did you play piano or study singing, anything like that?
No, I studied singing for a bit. So going back to the Les Mis thing. So I was doing music at school, and we had to perform on our instrument, and I didn't have an instrument. My instrument was my voice. I decided that I could sing, and no one else thought I could. But I remember I asked my dad if I could sing to him because I wanted to practice singing in front of him because I'd never sung in public. And we put on Ruthie Henshaw singing I Dreamed a Dream because that's what I was singing. I didn't understand the concept of a backing track or anything like that. So I was like, I'll put it on. And obviously I had a different interpretation to her. So our timings were off. So after a little while, my dad was like, oh no, turn this off. Like, you just sing it. So I sung it a cappella to my dad. And my dad is very un-theatre. And he was like, when I sung, he was like, right, we need to get you singing lessons because you've got a voice. So then I
Oh.
started having some singing lessons, yeah, which was amazing. But piano, I'm self-taught. It's really great in many ways because I'm really proud of being able to get to the level that I've got to. It's also really annoying because I can't play a lot of my own music. Um,
So I'm curious, I will jump ahead a little bit. What's
mm.
your process for composing? Are you playing piano or are you using notation software?
Yeah, I use Sibelius notation software and I play piano mostly. That's where I write. And it's a mixture. I'll tend to sit at the piano and just sort of noodle around until I find either an accompaniment phrase or a chord sequence that I like. And then sometimes it's a case of just playing it slowly into my keyboard, recording it, and then usually it's about speeding it up to the tempo that I want it to be at, but my fingers can't do that, and looping it so that I can sing over the top of it, or yeah. And sometimes it's all at the piano. It sort of depends what the show is and what is required.
And when you say self-taught piano, what
Mm.
did that process look like?
Well, it was because I wanted to be a musical theatre performer. And so I got lots of vocal selections and I had a little keyboard and I would, from music at school where they taught us the basics of how to read music and bash out a tune on the piano. So I sort of learnt how to play introductions to songs and then read chord symbols and melodies so that I could basically play an introduction and then accompany myself and bash out the melody to teach myself to sing it. So I'm very good at introductions. I can do about 4 bars of almost any musical theatre song. I'm like, I've got this down. And then if it doesn't have chord symbols, I'm lost,
Doom.
basically. But I'm really good at sight reading melody. I can sight read with chord symbols and a melody. I can sight read really, really well, which makes people think that I can play better than I can. I'm very good at pretending.
That's super cool. As someone who has come to playing late in life, it's very challenging for me. I'm not adept in any way. I can plunk out things, but very, very slowly. So that's just so inspiring. And you've gone on to write award-winning musicals. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's I did have lessons later on in life because I was like, I want to learn how to play properly so that because I felt like it was maybe holding me back a little bit. I had about a year of lessons until I ran out of money. um, and I didn't really progress in that year. What I did is get to the level that I was at, but properly, because obviously I had to go back to the beginning to unlearn all of the makeshift ways that I'd learned how to play.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I feel like I'm probably a bit better now, but I'm largely where I was, but just I do it more correctly now, which makes it easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did it give you a better understanding of why you were doing what you were doing? Like, understanding the chord structure, or was that already kind of in your brain?
Yeah, I think that was sort of kind of in my brain, I think.
Mm.
I think there was still some, like sometimes I do things when I'm writing songs that people tell me are unusual, like jumps and leaps. But it's that thing of like they just make sense to me. So it's only when someone says, "Oh, that's why have you gone there? That feels odd," that I know that it's an odd thing to do. So I think that's sometimes where I have where I don't have that really intense music theory knowledge, that's yeah, that's when it's a good thing, where it's like I do something maybe a bit unexpected because I don't know what I'm supposed to do next
Yeah,
sometimes.
well, and the musical director comes in with their encyclopedic theory knowledge, and they're like, "This C diminished sus7 should go to
Uh-huh.
a" and you're like, "Yeah, cool, cool.
Yeah.
It just sounds good."
Yeah, totally.
It sounds like you had a really amazing music education through school, that at least the fundamentals was there.
Yeah. Yeah, it was yeah, I mean, I think it was life-changing in that, um, I was really fortunate that I went to a school where the arts was really encouraged, um, and um, and I was really supported by my teachers. I was I was a bit favorited, which was great for me. um, but I think because I was, like there were lots of boys that wanted to be in bands and rock stars and play guitar, and that was brilliant. And I think a lot of them are doing that now quite successfully. But there weren't many boys that wanted to sing in choir and wanted to sing musical theatre, and so I sort of got a lot of solos and things like that because I was always like the one boy in those things. Um, but annoyingly, it also meant that I was often given the tune, so I never got good at singing harmonies,
Haha.
which usually being in a choir can help you become really good at harmonies. But I was often just put on the tune, and so I'm terrible at singing harmonies still to this day. But
The
it was
perils.
yeah, exactly. But no, it was amazing. We did uh, lots of school plays, school musicals, and the staff were all really, yeah, really supportive. My music teachers told me that I was going to do it as a career, you know, and like that's in. I mean, you can't put money on that, saying when you're 14, I want to be in musicals, and them saying, great, and you're going to, and you'll do really well at it. Um, is yeah, I mean, not true. I still haven't played Chris in Miss Saigon, and those days are behind me now. Uh, but but yeah, just incredible just to have that. And it was so normal to me because I went to that school that was, the arts were so healthy that I didn't fully appreciate how unusual that is, especially for a sort of London comprehensive. um, we would just luck. I just lucked out that I went to a school that had good arts. If I'd have gone, I was really scientific and a real geek before I discovered sort of, I had a growth spurt and discovered lots of bad things in my teens. But I think if I'd have gone to a more scientific school, then I think it's very possible that I would have ended up doing something different because I was really in, and I wanted to be a doctor when I was about 11. I was really into science, and um, yeah, I don't know, but I just feel like I was put in an environment that just said, "You can do this," to a quite a ridiculous thing, to want to be.
And it speaks to so many things about the importance of arts education in schools and making it available to kids, and also providing a supportive environment for kids. If you say yes to them and like encourage their dreams,
Yeah,
look what can
totally,
happen.
totally. And we didn't have much money growing up, and again we were just fortunate that we went to a school that had sort of quite a mixture of affluence, and so I was surrounded by people. Like, most of my friends, their parents had more money than we did, and um, but they also opened my eyes to things that I wasn't getting at home because they had different cultural references. And I had friends that would their parents would go to the opera or go to the theatre, and we never did that. So I was just aware of it in a way. It wasn't quite as far away as it might have been,
Mm.
which I was really, yeah, really, really grateful for. And they had a brilliant scheme for learning instruments as well. Like I learned drums for about 2.5 years. Um, and I don't think it cost very much money, if anything, to do drum lessons at school. And as part of the drum heads, they were called. Um, and I loved it. And yeah, I don't, yeah, I think I was just very fortunate. It was amazing to go to that
Mm.
school. And there's quite a lot of musicians that have been to my secondary school, and I don't know if it's still the same, but Jess Glynn, who's a singer, went to my school, and way back in the day, Rod Stewart went there. So maybe it's like it's in the water or something.
Yeah. Do you have a memory or a favorite musical that you or a production that you were a part of while you were at school?
So yeah, we did West Side Story, which obviously we absolutely should not have done because I don't think there was one Hispanic person there. This was the mid-90s, and we were all stupid. And yeah, so we did West Side Story, and I was going to be Riff, and I was very excited. And then someone else joined in the sixth form, so he was older than me, and they gave him Riff, and I was
Oh,
devastated. He ended up becoming a good friend, so it was all right. But I was like, I was so gutted, and
this is my
I
chance.
know, come on. But then they did give me Cool, as so I would have a solo. But also, my favorite thing about it was that um, they'd cast someone to play Bernardo, who was like one of the cool kids, but he didn't really sing. But I think it was quite a coup to have this cool kid in the school show. And but when they did the quintet, they were like, "We're in trouble because the sharks that we've cast can't really sing, the male sharks." So I had to sing as a shark in the quartet, but it was like literally like I ran off stage as a jet, changed my t-shirt because obviously we were just wearing like I think jets were green and sharks were red t-shirts. Like changed my t-shirt, slicked my hair back to look like what we thought at the time was more Hispanic, and then went on, sung the quintet, then ran off, like ruffled my hair, changed my t-shirt to come back on for the rumble. It was, I mean, the sort of ridiculous, stupid thing that you do at high school. That, yeah, terrible. But I mean, it meant I got to sing the quintet, which I shouldn't as a shark, which was fun, and I shouldn't have. But um, yeah, so that was a really fun experience.
My high school did the Wiz in the
Oh
mid
no, I
90s,
mean,
and
just
I think we had like exactly two people of color in the entire school. Like,
yeah.
yeah. So I feel you on those problematic 90s choices.
Oh my god, yeah. I'm so
but
glad we are moving
but
away from that.
but also that we were how lucky to be exposed to that music and those experiences. There's
Yeah.
I yes, it's very problematic that we were doing those shows, but how wonderful to also be to learn those gorgeous scores.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
So, fast forwarding a little bit, is it right that Pieces of String was it started as part of your master's?
Yeah, yeah, it did. So we were given a time allocation for our final show for the Masters. It was about 40 or 45 minutes. And basically, we could use it however we wanted. So most people, had a 2.5 hour, 2 act show in mind. And so showed excerpts for 45 minutes, with some linking narration or something. I did my master's part time because I was working. The benefit of that meant that I saw one year graduate and saw all of their shows, and I thought that, oh, it's really tricky to get that excerpt thing right because there's always someone who's like, oh, I don't quite understand what happened and can't follow, and I just feel like it doesn't never really works as well as you think it will. So I decided I would write a complete one-act show that was like 35 minutes long, and it would be its own whole thing rather than this is bits of a bigger idea, um, which I think really worked well for me. Also, we hadn't on the we'd only written a 15-minute musical, so to go from a 15-minute musical to a 2 hour musical in our heads that we were showing 45 minutes of, I was like, I can't, even though I've spent 2 years sort of learning the structure of this. I haven't actually put it into practice, so it felt like a big thing to do. So yeah, so I wrote it as a half-hour show, and it was fab. And I was really fortunate. We had an amazing cast and creative team, and I was really fortunate that Andy and Wendy Barnes, who run Perfect Pitch, which develops new musicals, um, came to see it, and yeah, and then wanted to develop it, which was amazing.
Oh, okay. Yay, I'm excited. We're getting into it here. So the piece, you've talked in previous interviews about how the inspiration behind the piece was catching the tail end of this documentary that
Hmm.
talked about the experiences of gay soldiers in the US and the UK during World War II, and then also frustration and anger about gay men not being able to donate blood or being restricted from donating blood.
Yeah.
Um, so what part of, or I guess what part of that story was part of this very first iteration of the show?
So the I'd written like a monologue for an old person looking back over their life, thinking about a sort of lover that they had during the war, and then I'd written a couple of scenes from a play about not being able to give blood, and they were just sort of in the bottom drawer. And I thought that I realized, and I couldn't figure out how to do either of them, so they just got left as ideas and a couple of scenes. And then I realized that if I put the two ideas together and had, like different time frames and a contemporary couple and a couple in the Second World War, then there was something more to say, something about progress in uh, I don't know, in how people are accepted, and there was something interesting in how, to me, in how the Second World War, a lot of the pressures are external because it was illegal to be gay, and but then in the contemporary world, a lot of the pressures had become more internal because law had changed quite a lot, and so ostensibly it was okay to be gay, but people my generation still had a problem with their sexuality and still struggled, even though it wasn't illegal anymore. And I thought, oh, that's interesting to put those alongside each other.
Mm.
So the initial show had that. I mean, the half-hour show had the same arc as the show does now. It had the same dual time frames, two characters, and the linking character of Jane, who is sort of daughter of the war couple, one of the war couple, and mother of one of the um, gay couple in the contemporary times. And I knew that I wanted that I didn't just want to have these two together. I wanted the thread, because I'm also really interested in that idea of where things come from. I think it's maybe from me being so musical and into performing in a way that my family isn't really, but then there are a few outliers in my family that I've always been told. So George Martin, who produced the Beatles, an amazing producer, is my nan's cousin, and so
Ah.
so I was brought up in every single family party, because I sung quite a lot as a kid at family parties, and I wrote songs for like my mum's 50th and things like that. All these relatives that some I didn't really even know would be like, "Oh, you're just like George was when he was a boy," um, and so it's that strange thing of having a tie to something and someone just because of the accident of your birth. But like, yeah, but I've always felt really connected to him because I've been told that, oh, I must get it from him, even though it doesn't really work like that. So, all those things went into the pot basically, and are really what the show still is about, I guess.
Yeah, and I love that it's so theatrical, this device of having two time periods on the stage at the same time, and it was done so beautifully at the Mercury Theatre, Colchester. This clever intertwining of the two times. I'm curious about the musical style because I love that it's not like it's not pastiche in any way. It's a
Hmm.
very original sound and like you said before, that kind of poppy contemporary sound. Can you speak a little bit more about the choices that you made in composing the music?
Yeah, absolutely. So I didn't. At one point, I was gonna really lean into the time frames, and so really use sort of 1940s sounds, um, and then more contemporary stuff for the for the modern stuff. And then I just felt like, well, because the whole thing was about how these worlds speak to one another, and in certainly in the initial version, that was the half an hour version, what the way it sort of worked is all of the songs were quite thematic. So it was sort of like you'd get a scene with the contemporary couple, and then a song from the past, and then a scene from the past, and a song from the present. So I was sort of constantly putting these two things alongside each other, and I just thought, if we locate the times too much with the sound, then they won't feel connected, and I wanted them to sound like they were connected. Um, so that while there are some slight differences in what I've done musically with how some people sing and others do, I was like, I don't want it to be a 1940s sound, because then it instantly stops it from connecting to the contemporary people. And I wanted that thing of, you see people from the 40s singing a song, and while they're singing that, you can see the contemporary couple, and your brain is doing the work as it's overlaying it. And yeah, I think that doesn't work as well if your brain is being taken somewhere else. So that was a decision. I did have one in my early drafts. I did start writing a sort of Andrew Sisters song for three male soldiers, that was going to be a sort of history of gay rights throughout time.
Oh.
Yeah, it would have been a very different show to have this sort of like stylistic. Yeah, You Can't Stop Progress, it was called, but I'm glad I didn't follow that route.
for Put it in the trunk for next cabaret or
Exactly.
the song hope songs, the song cycle.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And I think it's a smart choice for two reasons. One, budgeting, because you don't need a big band when you're producing the
Hmm.
show. So very smart to you for that. But also I love how there are points in the music where they echo each other, and they're singing the same refrain in the different time periods.
Hmm.
And it's this beautiful like symbolic idea of um, these issues and these oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Like I want to say torture, but it's not the right word. But these things that torment us, I guess it is the right word.
Hmm.
Um, Coming through the generations, and how like what things that get passed down, even if we don't know, like through genetics or through people's behavior as a result of like keeping things hidden, the
Hmm.
way that those behaviors are passed on and those feelings get passed on. It's a really beautiful. I think it works really well.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm glad.
You're welcome. So you mentioned Perfect Pitch producers were at that first performance. So what happened next?
um, they got in touch to have a meeting, and so I went and met with Andy Barnes, and uh, yeah, I remember it really, really clearly, because it feels like it was quite one of those moments that really altered the course of my life. Um, he was just very, very lovely about the work, um, and yeah, and said that they would like to develop it, and could see that it could be expanded into a full length show. And I hadn't considered that. I had written it as a half-hour show. I wanted Andy and Wendy to come and see the show because I knew how supportive they were of new musicals, and um, but I think it was like, oh, I want them to see my work, to know who I am, to then whatever happens next. I didn't really
Commission
know how
something
it.
new or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I didn't know how it worked. I thought people just gave you money to write musicals, but that isn't the
They
case.
don't.
As I no, they really, really don't.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm
So
shocked.
I know. But so yeah, so I I wanted to do some thinking about it, because I also wanted to be sure that I could do it. I thought it was an amazing opportunity, but I thought, oh, I don't want to agree to do this, and then I don't know that I can turn it into a bigger story, or that it
Mm.
needs to do that. But Andy said to me, regardless of what you do with us, whether you continue with the show with us or not, if you carry on writing the way that you're writing at the moment, I think you're going to have a really interesting and exciting career. And that was just like, I mean, what just an incredible thing and kind thing for someone to say. Um, And I know that this is the way the world works, but like the world works by people giving you a chance. Like, and there are some people that are given a lot more chances than others.
Mhm.
And as a white man, I have a lot of chances that other people don't get, and I'm really conscious of that. But people like Andy and Wendy Barnes seeing something and going, we trust that you can do this, and so we're going to give you a sort of pull you up a little bit further than you are now. And there's a few people that have done that to me throughout my life that I think, yeah, it's incredible. And I think uh, it's just that's what you need is someone to go unproven. I think you can do this off what I've seen, and so I'm gonna support you to give it a go. And that's what they did, and are still doing. And they got Tony nominations today, and I'm just over the moon for them because they're producers of Six, and it's just like it just Andy Barnes, Wendy Barnes, Tony nominated producers is just a glorious thing that is so richly deserved. So yeah, I love them.
And just quickly on Six, another like show that could kind of thing that started as a university production and is now a Tony nominated, Olivier winning
Yeah,
musical.
totally,
and
yeah.
and the importance of organizations like Perfect Pitch that nurture new work and find new talent. So what was the process with them? Was it a workshop situation or
Yeah, so we did quite a few workshops. So it was basically I was tasked with making the show bigger and longer and turning it into, well, for a while it wasn't a two-act show. I resisted an interval for quite a long time
Mhm.
because I couldn't figure out a way to do it, and there was quite a lot of pressure. Once we brought some commercial producers on board, um, they wanted an interval because financially it's necessary um, in a lot of places, and I really resisted because I couldn't figure out a way to do it. And then I figured out a way to do it, and I was like, oh, okay, fine. But it just took me a bit longer to get there than they did. But yeah, we did some workshops, which uh, each one they were saying responding to what had happened before and giving me really good feedback, and then giving me time to figure out what to do next. And it was like, oh, I added a character here, or one character didn't sing and now sings, and um, each time it was figuring out, okay, what do we feel like we're still missing, what needs more work, um, and the joy of that is that they take control of everything. So I just had to write the material, but then they organize a workshop with actors and director and musical director and choreographer and space and time. And when you don't have to do any, and I've been doing fringe theatre where I have to do all those things as well, and I'm not a good producer. So when someone takes all that off and you're like, oh, all I have to do is write and show up and be there is like a gift. And then they would, turn some of those workshops into sharings to invite people. And off the back of that, we got some producers who optioned the show um, to then, yeah, get it onto the stage. But it had a couple of near misses where it was going to do something and then for various reasons didn't quite happen. I know it was going to go on tour and had like 3 venues around the country, and this was I think maybe 2015, and then it didn't happen. Um,
because this is over a
so
long period of time, right? This is from like a 7 year
yeah,
ish
yeah,
gestation period.
yeah. So the first half-hour version was on in October of 2011, and well, I started writing it in May of 2011, and then it was on at Colchester basically May 2018.
Wow.
So, and I had a job throughout this time, so I was working, and then there would be a couple of weeks of the year where I'd get to go and do a workshop, and then I'd go back to my job, and so although it was all that time, it was you know, if you put all that time together, it's probably about a year in total that I've been, because I don't work on it every day as well. Like we've got a
Mm,
workshop coming up. I'm like, right, for about 6 weeks or something, I'm frantically writing, and then I do the workshop, and then it gets put to bed until the next workshop comes up.
yep.
Um, but yeah, so
There's
It's
nothing
been a
like a
long
live
time.
deadline and other humans in the room to make you write, right?
Oh my God, yeah, I need it. I need it.
I'm curious what your, I want to call it your side job was, well, in between
Oh
workshops
gosh.
and
Well, at that time, I worked for a charity fundraising organization, and I was just in the office. Um, yeah, basically just an office manager. It was one of those jobs that I got because it was like an actor's job that was really flexible, and I managed to work my way into the office because I was terrible at the actual fundraising. um, and I was really fortunate because it was really flexible, and it was basically like, as long as you get your work done, you can do whatever you want. So when I did my masters, for example, I had to miss a day a week to go to uni, and that was fine. They didn't make me take all my holiday to do it. They just said just get the work done. So I just stayed later where I needed to. So yeah, so I did that until 2015, and then that company went into administration. Not my fault, I swear. um,
you got your
and
work done.
yeah, and I was already sort of trying to get out. I've been there 9 years, so I was like, I need to get out of this. And yeah, and then I started doing a PhD, so I didn't go back into another job. But I did random, I was an usher, and I worked at Somerset House ice rink, which I
Oh,
loved.
that's a
So yeah,
gorgeous place.
yeah, I loved it because I love Christmas as well. So like for 3 weeks or a month over Christmas, I was just like, yeah, I'll just go and work there when I was
Christmas
doing
in
my
London is
PhD.
the best. It's so
Yeah, I agree.
magical.
I
Oh,
agree.
yeah, I only had 2 Christmases there, but oh, I would love to go back and have Christmas there because Covent Garden and that whole area is so
Yeah,
beautiful
it's
with all the
gorgeous.
lights and.
But we're like that with Christmas in New York. Like that's magical for us.
I'll trade you.
Okay, great, perfect. We do like at the holiday.
Yeah. So the run at Mercury Theatre Colchester. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, it was amazing. Just because it was happening, it was like I was so happy that it was actually happening. After what felt like so long and so many like, oh, it might happen, it might not, and even just getting for it to happen at the Mercury, we were originally hoping to then go straight from the Mercury into London somewhere to do like a limited run. Um, and that fell, all of these things are things that I was not really part of. The producers do lots of things and they tell me what I need to know. And that took a bit of figuring out as a writer as well, being like, oh, shouldn't I know that? And then going, actually, I don't need to know that. And they saved me quite a lot of stress by just waiting until things were things
Mm,
before, because if they told me all of the things that were speculated, I would feel probably quite disappointed because most of them don't happen. So they're quite good at saying, this is happening, so we're going to tell you it now, rather than this might happen and we're having a conversation about that. But we were due to go into London afterwards, or hoping to. And that was one of the sort of caveats of the show happening, was that it would have to have these two parts because otherwise it's a big expense. And so when the London didn't happen, I was terrified that it would all fall through.
mm,
But thankfully, the Mercury were invested enough that they were like, no, we want to do this now. We're not going to pull out. And yeah, and so they did, and it was amazing. I
and
was
it
really
won
lucky.
multiple awards and it was
Yeah,
brilliant.
but I was so lucky that I got to be there the whole time, which is quite rare, I think. And it's because I wanted to be. They hadn't factored in me being there, and I was like, "Can I?" And I was lucky that the director Ryan McBride was okay, and well, not okay, but very happy with me being there. I did check. I was like, I don't want to step on your toes, and I know it's unusual, but also it's a new show. We haven't done it before, so there are things to figure out, and I think me being there is going to be useful.
Mm,
Um, and he agreed with that. And most of the time, I just sat there and watched. And every now and then, I'd be able to answer a question. But just getting to be part of that, and because I'm an actor at heart, like I love being in the rehearsal room, and just being around the people that make theatre, the actors, the crew, the creatives. It's just it's my happy place. So I was really grateful that they let me be part of that whole thing. And I went to Colchester and I stayed there and in my digs, and I went to rehearsals every day. And yeah, I don't know that I'll ever get that experience again
Mm.
when shows happen, because it is quite unusual. Normally you're there for the first couple of days and then you just pop in at the end of the week, to check how things are going and answer any burning questions. Um, but I'm really glad that I did that, just to be like, I want to drink this whole experience in, because you never get another first show. So, and I feel like I really did, like I really was awake for it.
Mm. Do you think, as a result of being able to watch that process, are there any changes that you want to make to the show?
Well, yes, there are, and I am writing them at the moment.
Ooh.
So yes, there are, and I tried to make some during the process. I was trying to write a new song, and I didn't get it done in time. And it reached a certain point where Ryan was like, "Even if you get it done, it's not going in now. So stop trying." And I was like, "Okay, fine." Um, and yeah, and I think if we'd have gone to London or somewhere else fairly soon after Mercury, I probably would have made changes immediately. What actually happened was that we had the whirlwind of like award stuff, which was really amazing, and then I went like headfirst into finishing my PhD and sort of shut myself off from the world. And then we had a pandemic. So I feel like the next bit of Piece of String Journey has been weirdly postponed
Mm.
from where it could or should have been. Not should have been, because it will be what it is, but could have been. But so now I'm working on some rewrites and some tweaks, and yeah, trying to get it ready to go again. And it's largely just thinking about some of the characters to make sure they're fully rounded, and framing the way that we see the show, thinking about who we're following a bit more.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so it's one of those things that the changes to me feel seismic because I know it so intimately, and to everyone else they don't feel like changes at all. I keep giving my partner bits to read and just saying, "Can you just tell me if this is still Piece of String?" And he was like, "Yes, it's still Piece of String." I'm like, "Good, good." Yeah, so
Were you part of the process behind filming, or were you aware of that the show was being filmed in Colchester?
yeah, I was aware. That was set up by Andy Barnes. They'd done it. Perfect Pitch had done it with a couple of other productions of theirs. They'd done it with Lift. They'd done it from
From
Up
up
Here.
here? Yeah.
Yeah, which is a lovely show.
Oh, I
Um,
love both of those too.
yeah, yeah,
And
they're really really
developed around
good.
the same time, like, or were in, like, early development around that kind of 2011, 2012
Yeah,
period.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
they were sort of on the roster, and then happened just as I was beginning my journey with Perfect Pitch. Um, but so they had a relationship with digital theatre, and I'll be honest, like when it was first suggested by Andy, I was a little bit hesitant because I felt like this was our out of town tryout in many ways, in that like I knew that there were going to be things that once we put it in front of an audience, we would want to tweak and fix, and so I was a bit like, oh, is this going to be the version that is forever the version, and does that mean I can't change it? Um, you know, and I just never done it before, and I was like, I don't, and and Andy as ever was really brilliant and explained why he thought it was a good idea, um, and was just like, regardless of what happens, it's really great to have this record of the show, um, and you know, yeah, and we all agreed, because everyone had to sign off, all the cast and crew, and everyone had to sign off on it to say that we were happy with it being filmed. And I'm so glad that it was, because um, it's given our little show like a much bigger life than it would have had, because we don't have a cast recording. Um, I know, which is how a
I
lot of
just pulled a
people.
sad face for listeners who
Yeah.
can't see.
But yeah, so which is how a huge amount of people find their musicals these days, and how shows like Six have had built their successes off the back of cast album. We don't have that,
Mm.
So just having it available on digital theatre for people to watch has been tremendous. And in the UK, I don't know if it's the same overseas, but in the UK, most universities or drama schools have subscriptions to Digital Theatre Plus, which means that if you're a student, you can access all of those shows for free. And I've taught at higher education establishments, and so I would do watch alongs with my students, not of Pieces of String, I hasten to add, but of the other shows that are on there, so that they were aware that there's this thing available to them and it's free. So, and because I worked in higher education, there were a lot of people that I knew that taught in musical theatre colleges around the country that were like, well, if we do Pieces of String, we've got access to it, and we can speak to Gus as well because I know Gus. So what was brilliant is that I had a few colleges do projects about Pieces of String, um, which was fantastic. Like one university did like a marketing thing of how they would market the show, and
Oh, cool.
yeah, which was really fun. And then I did like Q&As with the students. So yeah, it's been incredible for that, for just giving it a life beyond what
And
it would have
that's
had.
something digital theater are truly a leader in. I mean, they were one of the first theater streaming
Hmm.
platforms, and their Digital Theater Plus, the education branch, I believe it is worldwide. I think any school
Great.
anywhere can sign up for it. And it's not just about being able to watch shows, like you say, being able to incorporate these other programs where you can do marketing and
Hmm.
business planning and arts programming and history. Like there's so many elements that fold into it. It's not just about, although it is wonderful being able to watch the shows, but it's not just about that in an educational
Yeah,
context.
definitely,
I'm
definitely.
curious. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about your PhD
Oh
and
yeah.
how pieces of string folded into your research. Which so your paper was called "Standing in the Shadows: Reframing Homosexuality in Musical Theatre."
Yeah. So yeah, so I was looking at particularly gay male representation in musical theatre, and it was a practice-led PhD. So it meant that I wrote a thesis that was smaller than a normal thesis, but then wrote a show. And initially, I was going to write something new, and then Pieces of String happened in the middle of it, and I realized that Pieces of String sort of tackled all of the things that I was tackling in my thesis, and I should use that because I could be as radical as I want to if I'm working in a studio with students that no one sees the work. But actually, this was a musical that people were paying tickets for. And that is really what I was speaking about. Is like, what can you do commercially? What are the restrictions on how gay people are presented in musicals? Um, and so, yeah, so it was really useful, and it also meant I had a really brilliant um, footage to submit. And one of my supervisors said, "I think this is probably like the most professional like PhD submission footage ever." And I was like, "Yeah, I would imagine so."
Yeah,
Um,
it's not a camera on a tripod at the back of the theater. It's
no,
digital theater quality.
yeah, exactly.
Multi cameras. Is it three camera,
I
three
think it
camera
was
shot?
3 cameras. I think,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, so it was the PhD was amazing, um, mostly because it paid me. Um, so I didn't get paid very much at all, but I got like what's called the Dean's Stewardship. So it was like a subsistence to be able to do that as my job. I still had to work at Somerset House at Christmas time, but it basically covered the bills and meant that I didn't, when I was made redundant, didn't have to go straight into another full-time job, which was a real um, luxury. So when I was doing Piece of String, also because Piece of String was part of my thesis, I was able to be completely involved in all of the show and all of the rehearsals and be like, I'm not shirking my PhD responsibilities. Um, yeah,
From your research, what I know I'm like asking you to uh, summarize an entire thesis, but how would you characterize like the history of representation of gay men in musical theater, and uh, what is next, or what do you see as
yeah.
the future of it?
So the history is that there are sort of three tropes that men fall into, and this was a these were identified the way that the terms that I used were by Dr. James Lovelock, who's a brilliant academic, but he called them the dancing queen, the drama queen, and the drag queen,
Mhm.
and pretty much said any musical theatre, any gay character in musical theatre, gay male in musical theatre was one of those. Sometimes they were more than one, but they were drag queen, they were dancing queen, which basically was like Elder, can't remember his name, in Book of Mormon, Turn It Off, or Keep It
Mhm.
Gay in The Producers. They sort of come
Mhm.
on and have one fabulous big number, or the drama queen, as in tragic. Um, People like the character Whizzer in Falsettos, Angel in Rent, who's also a drag queen. But you could put those onto almost everything, and it was like there were these acceptable ways of being gay, which either meant that you were sort of punished for your gayness, which is a trope that we see in all kind of queer fiction. Like there's a big, lesbian fiction. There's loads of stories of that, of this sort of idea of having to die or be alone, or
Sexual violence and
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. You sort of, in some way,
outcasts.
you are punished for your sexuality, or you are, this sort of drag queen. So it's it's kinky boots, even though that character is heterosexual, which is not. That's a whole other thing.
Tune in later for
Yeah, but yeah, or Priscilla Queen of the Desert. It's
Mhm.
a Lacage. It's these, and that's okay because it's sort of frivolous and fantasy and larger than life, which goes with what we think about musicals. So it feels safe, but actually having um, sort of gay male characters who are sort of ordinary and not tragic and not flamboyant, and is quite tricky, or it's quite tricky because it just doesn't happen that much, but it is really changing. And what's more important is that there are so many more queer characters generally, because I was writing my PhD from the perspective of gay male because I'm a gay male, and one of the things I had to say in my PhD was that, like, this is a purposefully narrowed focus because that's what you have to do. There's too much otherwise, but like, at least I have something to talk about. Lesbians, bisexual, transgender people, there's like nothing in comparison. And that feels like it's starting to change. There are more and more queer characters that are queer, and sometimes the queerness is central to the show and central to their identity, and sometimes it isn't. And I think that's good. I'm not one of these people that feels like we need to just have queer characters where the queerness isn't a thing, because my queerness, my gayness is a real thing for me. It's like I really feel like my identity has been formed because of my gayness, and so for me, I don't necessarily always want it to be an incidental fact, but I think there needs to be a whole heap of stories where it is incidental to balance out the ones where it isn't. You
Mhm.
know, um,
And to balance out those tropes, like what you were saying about the dearth of stories featuring lesbian characters or transgender characters, like
yeah,
I could name like three off the top of my head, like Head Over Heels, Fun Home, and I can't even think of a third one right now. But uh, and how they kind of fall into the same stereotypes, that it's like
yeah,
they're either punished or the comic relief.
yeah,
um and again,
totally.
thinking of the producers, the lighting designer
Yeah,
is a butch lesbian, and yeah, it's
yeah. It's tricky, I think, but it's also the burden of responsibility that I think, if you're a minority of any kind, that when you make work, you feel, or that is put upon you, that you somehow are meant to then be speaking for the entirety of your minority. So as a gay writer, I am somehow writing for all gay people everywhere and all gay experiences. And obviously that isn't accurate, and that we know that isn't the case, and that just isn't a thing that is put upon straight white people, you know? So, uh, but there's always going to be less work that focuses on queer characters, and so there's less opportunity for it to be sort of normalized and not be a novelty because there's not enough. If you write, there could be two Wild Party musicals, which has some queerness in it, but like if I wanted to write a show about a teenage drag queen, everyone would say we've already got Jamie, we don't need another one.
Yeah.
But there are a million shows that are about a boy and girl falling in love, and no one says no, we've already got West Side Story, we don't need it. Do you know what I mean? We've already got
And Oklahoma
Oklahoma.
and Carousel and
Exactly. No one would say no, we don't need it. But if it was queer, people say, but that exists. So, and
yeah, we've
that's
got Fun
changing.
Home. We
But
don't need any more lesbian musicals. Why would we need more?
yeah,
Question mark. Absolutely joking. Don't take me seriously when I say
yes, yeah.
that. What's next for you mentioned that you're doing some rewrites. What's next for Pieces of String?
Next for Pieces of String is fingers crossed. Another production. Yeah, that's the plan. That's what we're all working towards. And so I'm currently getting the new draft ready to try and cement some dates. Obviously, everything in this industry is precarious anyway. So many things have to fall into place for any show to happen. It's even more
Global
so.
pandemic withstanding.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say even more so with the pandemic, and that's pushed shows behind, and it's affected the risk people will take, and so yeah, who knows what will happen, but we are all working towards getting another production at the Mercury again. Hopefully, some other regional theatres, and then into town. That's the goal. And but at the moment, my goal is just to get the new draft done and get it as good as I possibly can, and then we'll see what happens from there, because that's what I can take control of, and so that's what I will do.
What would you say to other writers who are nervous about having their work filmed and put on a public platform?
Oh, I think it's, yeah, like you have to do it. Well, I think everyone's gonna do it now. Like we were sort of ahead of the curve in that way, but because the pandemic has shown the world and the people with the money that filming something doesn't take away the in-person profit. People don't, there will be some people that say, oh, I can watch Hamilton on Disney Plus, so I won't go and see it live. But those people are going to be so small in comparison to the people that watch Hamilton and go, oh, I really want to see it live now. So I think this is going to be the norm, in that every show will be filmed properly and will be screened. I know it's amazing, and be screened, and they'll do some things where they're like, yeah, like special screenings and limited, and they won't be all available all the time like Hamilton are, and that's fine. There'll be ways of making money in that way, but um, I think it's the best thing that could happen to theatre, because I discovered theatre through filmed theatre and cast recordings, um, and so this is sort of filmed theatre. It's the evolution of cast recordings. It's just like we still have those, but now also we can watch the pro shot. And also, I'd rather see that than movie musicals. I love movie musicals, and I'm glad that we've got more of them now. But like they can sit alongside pro shots, and filmed live performances. I think, yeah, it's just they're really important, I think.
You are speaking my language.
Yeah.
So, to wrap us up, I have my favorite segment called My Favorite Things, where I ask you a series of questions. You don't need to think about them too much. Whatever comes to mind is
Okay.
good. There are no wrong answers. What is your favorite musical?
Oh my god. Okay, it's Company.
Hmm. Do you have a particular production that you
I
like, or is it just the
do.
show in general? Oh, do
John My
share.
Warehouse, Adrian Lester.
Aha, which was filmed live.
And I
I
saw it
mean,
on, that was another one I saw when
oh,
at home on a Saturday night on BBC Two, and was another like shift for me, that like, this is what musicals can be. Yeah,
yeah. Oh, I love that. This is why we need to film shows.
exactly.
Make them available. Do you have a favorite filmed live musical?
Oh gosh, pieces of string. No. Um,
Good answer.
do I have a favorite filmed live musical? Oh, well, it's a concert version, but it would be the Dreamcast 10th anniversary of Les Mis.
Mm,
I still think it's the best version as well of the. I've seen all the other versions and they're great, but like I still think that is the best.
you can't beat that finale. It's so epic.
Yeah.
So a filmed live musical isn't exactly a stage show, and it's not exactly a film. So what should we call it?
Um. Oh, I don't know. I mean, I'm okay with filmed live musical.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on bootlegs?
Oh, well, I really hate them, but I also love them. I've never I won't watch a whole show bootlegged. Like I won't sit there and watch a slime tutorial. Um, but I know how important they are. And again, it's one of those things that like I'm like, probably they do more good than harm because the people that really seek them out and find them are the people that are fans that are going to want to see the show anyway. I don't think anyone will sit and watch a version of Next to Normal that's recorded from the gallery where you can see like coming in and out of focus and then be like, great, I've seen it now. I don't need to go and see it. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So yeah, well, I guess pro shots, film live musicals will make them less necessary, but you're always going to get it. Everyone wants to hear the end of Defying Gravity with the new Elphaba, and unless the shows start releasing those things, you know, and I think they did with Lucy Jones, which took over as Elphaba. They were like, here is her Defying Gravity, so that everyone could hear her or whatever she did.
Yeah.
Um, but this is why I'm not Alphaba. A little glimpse of why I never got cast. But yeah, I think it's like sharing cards that people used to do with like baseball cards or whatever. It's like it's a modern equivalent of that of like sharing
Mm.
community. So I think officially I'm against it because it's illegal. But dot
I
dot dot.
really like that analogy about the baseball cards. I like that. Uh, what stage musicals do you wish had been filmed?
Oh gosh. Um, Dreamgirls, the original cast. Even though I saw the revival, which was a replica, but I still would have liked to have seen Jennifer Holliday. Um,
Mm.
what do I wish had been filmed? A Witches of Eastwick.
Mm.
Yeah, because I loved that. And the original Miss Saigon, although obviously Jonathan Pryce now, I'm glad it wasn't for that reason. Um, but yeah, that I loved that show, that cast recording when I was a kid. Um, so yeah.
Yeah. What would you like to see filmed in the future?
Um, all of my shows.
Excellent.
Yes. What would I like to see filmed? Um, I would love. This is maybe the last question, but I would love there to be a Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet
Mm. Yes.
because
Oh, what I would give.
yeah, I never saw it and I've heard bits of it and I like it, but I think it's one of those shows that you sort of need to see to um yeah. Oh, and another one is Spring Awakening, although I know we've got the documentary.
Mm.
So yeah. Um
Oh, the documentary killed me because I would just want to see I did see it back in 2008, back in the day, and it made me ache to see it again
right.
and to re-experience it. And also the concert from that documentary, the reunion concert, I wish they'd released the full concert.
Yes.
But Natasha, I got to see a few years ago when it was on Broadway, and I saw it with my husband and a friend, both of whom are not really musical theater people.
Right.
And the three of us had this like transcendent, amazing experience at that show. And I was
Oh
like,
wow.
I don't know how you could capture it because there's so much going on at the same time. Like it's totally possible we can do anything, but yeah, it's definitely a show that deserves a wider audience, and I'm
Yeah.
so mad that it closed the way that it did.
Yeah. I think A Strange Loop is a show that I really hope they film because uh I think it's an important one, is it? I mean It's a Pulitzer Prize winner, so that makes it one of a small few anyway.
And
But
as of today, I think 11-time Tony
11,
nominee, the
yeah, which
most
is
Tonys, something like that.
amazing. Amazing. And and Michael R. Jackson has been writing that show for longer than I've been writing Pieces of String, so
Mhm.
I'm here for it. But yeah, I hope that show is given as much opportunity to find an audience, as possible. And I think it is, but like, yeah, I think it's there are some shows that sell themselves. Six is one of those because it's so infectious. And Strange Loop, I think, is probably harder work, So I hope people can find it and access it.
Me too.
Oh, yeah.
So you have a book coming out soon, is that right? Or is it soon
Yeah.
in the near future?
Soon. Next year, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, next year. So it's a edited collection that I'm co-editing with Claire Chandler, who is a musical theatre academic here. Um, and I when I was doing my PhD, I went to a few conferences and spoke about my work, and there were some really good talks about some British musicals, and we realised that there was not that much space given over to British musicals in musical theatre academia, in part because a lot of them have really short lives, because they run regionally and just for a few weeks, and so not a huge amount of people see them unless you have something like digital theatre, which gives Piece of String a bigger life than the 2 weeks in Colchester that it would have had. And there are some shows that I think are really innovative and worth being part of the conversation. And so that was the idea behind this book, is that we would do, and over the last 10 years, British musical theatre has just the whole community has transformed. And I think there's still, maybe from the outside, this sort of, we're still sort of stuck a little bit in Andrew Lloyd Webber mega musical land, and actually that isn't at all what it's like on the ground. And
Mm.
so this book will have 10 essays, all focusing on a different musical, written by academics, and then each essay will be accompanied by an interview that myself and Claire will conduct with someone involved in the production. And we want that to be a variety, so it won't just be the writers, it'll also be producers. We're hoping to speak to some marketing people so that we can give sort of a really good, broad oversight of all the things that go into making musicals. And we're going to look at Six, and we're going to look um, at some of the biggies like that, but also we're looking at shows like The Assassination of Katie Hopkins, The Grinning Man. These brilliant,
One
yeah,
of my
these brilliant
favorites.
shows that and everything we've chosen has some way of accessing it. So hope some of them are filmed, but some of them we've just got, they've released the text so that you can um, read the script, because we want people in the US and all over the world to be able to teach and know these shows. So it's important that there's also materials available, and that's another reason why filming musicals is really important, because if people want to talk about gay representation in musical theatre, they can talk about La Cage aux Folles, and they can talk about Fun Home, and they can talk about Rent, but they can also talk about Pieces of String now, because it exists and is available, and that's exciting, because we should be pushing the conversation forward. We shouldn't just be talking about Showboat, Oklahoma, West Side Story. It's like those are benchmarks, but some of them are 80 odd years old now, and we need to be talking about the show, shows that are written by women, shows that are written by POCs as well, really shifting things. And the more that gets filmed, the more all of those little shows that have little lives can sort of live on forever in a bigger way.
Preach. So, where can we find you online so we can sign up to get info about your book?
I've got a website which is just gusgowland.com, and I do a newsletter. And I don't do it very regularly because I always forget to do it, but you can sign up, and every now and then you'll get a random email from me when I remember that I've got something to say. But also, I'm on Twitter at Gus Gowland, or Instagram at Christopher Jones, or TikTok at Gus Gowland. And I'm writing a Heartstopper musical on TikTok, which is so much fun. So if you're on TikTok, come and check out my
Ooh,
Heartstopper musical.
I really need to just like figure out TikTok. I
Me
I'm a bit
too.
of a grandma when it comes to TikTok, but I know that there is a huge musical theater community
Yeah,
there, and Bridgerton just won a Grammy,
won a
so
Grammy.
it's again like
Astonishing.
film live musicals are changing the game about how we can access the way social media is changing too, is a whole other
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah.
Well, Gus, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. I've loved it.
The Filmed Live Musicals podcast is created and edited by your host, Luisa Lyons, with thanks to our wonderful patrons, Josh Brandon, Geraldine Brewer, Belinda Broido, Elliot Charles, Jillian Dos Santos, Rachel Esteban, Mercedes Esteban Lyons, Rusty Fox, David Jones, James T. Lane, Heather Madrone, Alison Matthews, Al Monaco, David Negrin, Amy Penn, Gerald Piper, Jesse Rabinowitz and Brenda Goodman, David and Catherine Rabinowitz, Joe Tilliston, and Beck Twist for financially supporting the site. FilmedLiveMusicals.com is the most comprehensive list of film, stage musicals. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. If you would like early access to this very podcast, early access to site content, the full weekly newsletter with info on upcoming streams, and exclusive access to the streaming calendar, become a Filmed Live Musicals patron for as little as $3 a month. And if you're outside the US, you can sign up in your local currency. Visit filmedlivemusicals.com to learn more. If you like what you hear, please leave a review in your podcast app. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and thanks for listening.